Yes, we have finally arrived, the last segment. Thanks for sticking along. Your attention span is phenomenal. Let's talk about state versus voluntary adoption. So we went over this earlier, so just as a review, state adoption is when the political entity of an area adopts a particular custom. For example, the Roman Empire state adopted Christianity. Many times, state adoption also has voluntary adoption in it, in which people who want to support the state voluntarily adopt the state's new custom, such as the Roman Empire at first with Christianity. Syncretism versus assimilation, we already went over. So, as a review, syncretism is when one group attempts to convert another and does so through the mixing and adoption of the group that's experiencing conversion's customs. So, like the early Christians and Rome. Assimilation is when one group becomes absorbed into another. So, like immigrants being absorbed into American culture, that's assimilation. Now, let's talk about the spread of Buddhism compared to Islam. So while Islam was militant, Buddhism spread much more peacefully at first. Elites and voluntary converts were converted by missionaries, and in many areas, missionaries lived in housing known as monasteries. And these monasteries expanded to become the focal point, the entire cultural center in some areas. So of course they were very important. Next up is one of my favorites. So notice convert in quotation marks. We talk about all this conversion, but have you ever wondered if all of it is real? And this is what this slide is going to talk about. It turns out in many areas, forced conversion didn't necessarily have the best results. When people had to convert under pressure, many disbanded and often left their cultures. But when people voluntarily converted, they usually stayed cohesive over the course of time. Also, when pressured, people tended not to be real. They maybe would convert to, say, Islam, for example, on the outside, but secretly still worship their wooden idols or practice old cultural customs inside. And this is syncretism right here. Some people took a bit of each and created a syncretic religion. So in many areas, you'll see, like, for example, Islam is syncretic. Like, if someone forced me only to drink Starbucks, I might still drink bubble tea in secret, right? Or maybe put bubble tea into my Starbucks? Yuck. I don't know. Vote in the comments below. Would you try Starbucks bubble tea? Now to a major cause of early spread of Christianity. Like we said earlier, gaining recognition from the mighty Roman Empire was a huge plus. Now the Christian influence could be exerted everywhere Romans had influence, but of course remember it was only possible with the syncretism to Roman pagan cults. So the major cause of early spread of Christianity is directly tied to the Roman Empire, who converted through syncretism. The jizya. Defined, it's a poll tax levied on non-Muslims by Muslim rulers, say in a foreign land. And this is the economic incentive I've been talking about in past slides. So in many areas, because the Muslims, they were militant and they conquered many lands, if you converted, you didn't have to pay this tax. So it was a huge plus. But of course, if you were loaded, cha-ching, am I right? And you didn't want to convert, you could just pay the tax. So it really wasn't that big of a deal, but if you didn't have money, then conversion was probably better for you. And this is an example of the jizya from the past. So next we have LDT affects 600 to 1000. LDT stands for long distance trade, so of course trade that is long distance, and there were a ton of them. So the main one was round 2 of cross-cultural encounters. So round 1 was like the first Silk Roads, and with 600 rolling around, the second Silk Road started to appear again, and there were more cross-cultural encounters. And this was aided primarily by the foundation of large imperial states. There were more and more states popping up across Eurasia compared to the past, where there were just like Rome, China. Not many, and they weren't super big, but now there were super large imperial states that were popping up. Also, you have the cooperation of nomadic peoples and transport. So like the first Uber, the nomadic people had superior technology like the horses that they really knew how to use, and they had knowledge of the lands because they were nomadic. They traveled a lot. So sometimes people would cooperate with these nomads to try to travel and communicate better. Also, you have links between settled regions. Of course, I mentioned the second Silk Road, but also there's this new sea route that's really important, and that's the sea lanes of the Indian Ocean. And this was possible because merchants and sailors, they were able to detect the monsoon patterns, which, by the way, still occur today. Basically, they figured out that in the wintertime, the monsoon blows in from the northeast, so China, Mongolia. It's stopped by the Himalayas, but some still get through and push from the northeast all the way down to like Africa. But in the summertime, it's the opposite. So it goes from like Tanzania, Madagascar, and it blows northeast into India. So with the knowledge of the monsoon winds, they could find new places to go. And also, missionaries and pilgrims started to become more and more. Literacy and religions of salvation across Eurasia spread. And you see this in like Islam and Buddhism, where they had missionaries go to more places. And also the pilgrimage, the Hajj for Muslims. They were able to get to Mecca too, because with these new long-distance trade and these new long-distance routes. Next, we have major traders in early Silk Roads, and we already talked about that. But basically, the Roman Empire in Italy was a big deal, and the Han Empire in China. But also, some nomads across Eurasia also played a pretty big role. And this is what's known as the First Silk Road. The Second Silk Road, of course, comes with the advent of LDT from 600 to 1000, and even further on. So, Trader Joe's. Oops, that's kind of the wrong image, but you get the point. Effects of religion encounters. So generally, as we talked about, converts occurred. People were converted, some were forced, while others voluntarily converted. But throughout history, a lot of religious conversion occurred, both ways. And if a religion was lucky, they could get like the elites to convert and sponsor it, further increasing the chance of winning more converts in their land. And of course, this is known as state adoption. Also, a culture change also happened. Religion is a big part of culture, and changing religions many times change the culture of certain peoples. Finally, we have Nestorians versus Manichaeism. Both had elements of Christianity involved. Nestorians were more conservative Christians, and they were based in the Central Asian steppes. They didn't believe Jesus was the same as God the Father and the Holy Spirit, also known as the Trinity. They don't really exist today. Manichaeism was like less strict, as we talked about earlier, and it syncretized Christian, paganism, and Gnostic elements. And just like the Nestorians, they don't really exist today. Well, that's a wrap. This has been Old World Encounters in 3 videos. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please make sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified of new videos. Help me reach 1,000 subscribers. Thanks. Also, like, comment, and share with your friends. The more, the merrier. Make sure to check out my full selection of world history videos, and more will come as well. Well, until next time, see ya.